Why does it so often occur that people do not seize obvious opportunities to achieve more or have a better life? Why do nearly all of us struggle with keeping promises or good resolutions? And what is the underlying reason? The answer is probably the same for most people, and you are about to receive it. This answer has been known for centuries and ought to have turned leadership and upbringing practice upside down. Applying the answer is the first and single most important prerequisite to move companies into a league of their own, and it is the first premise to achieve a truly happy family life. What this video illustrates is the fundamental and decisive importance for people and parents with a strong desire to contribute to a better quality of life and the ability to achieve better results in other people. In this video, we discuss how we develop values over the course of our lives. It can be material values or emotional values. It can be money, results, love, relations, and so on. In short, things we value. In this video, we do what we do in all the other videos on this website. We use the character of Nick as an example. In Nick's development of values, he follows a program which has been formed through his genetic heritage and his experience. In other words, everything Nick has experienced up until this moment. The blue curve shows the positive changes Nick is carrying out at his own initiative. It shows what he is succeeding at. You will see that in the latter part of life, the changes he creates are bigger. The curve is becoming steeper. This is because Nick has come to a point in his life where he thinks that he has worked and learned so much that he thinks he deserves both a house and a cabin, of a higher standard than was possible before. Nick will no longer accept, for example, a bad marriage. He wants a happier and more harmonious life. What could we have said about Nick if he had had this curve? Well, we could have said that he is born with an unstoppable will and curiosity, and that his parents and other important people stimulated him until he achieved everything he tried for. Nick is most likely born with a natural sense of what is right and wrong, and he has learned that he deserves love no matter what he does and to which extent he succeeds with his endeavors. You will now see why this version of Nick is the ideal partner and employee. We will show you this by going back to the first version we looked at. Here you can see there is also a red curve. This shows what Nick accepts of negative occurrences and changes before he takes action at his own initiative. He accepts, for example, some bad health as well as loss, abandonment of personal values. The most important part of this program, except for what is genetic, became formed during the course of his first 2 years alive. The program for the rest of his life is in general in place at the age of 15 to 20. His fundamental relationship to money, for example, he develops in the pocket money phase. This might sound something like, I don't deserve the money I feel that I need. As long as Nick sees his life unfold between these two lines, or according to his subconscious program, he feels satisfied. Life is okay. He exists in this flow zone. The closest light area in the area is where he has an overview. He can imagine anything that is inside this zone. They are known things. They are acceptable. They are things he believes are within his grasp. This is what he deserves as a reward for who he is and what he does. Whatever is above this line are things he cannot imagine in his life. They are foreign to him, and he is unaware that the program in his head is keeping him away from this area because it contains more than what Nick feels he deserves in life. Nick is in a development program for leaders, and in this instance asks himself the question about which values he wants to create as a leader. He asks himself the question to which extent he wants to exceed. In the period until he, for example, is 38 years old, Nick has been raised for modesty and imagines a real value increase of 10%. This represents the maximum of what he can and will do at his own initiative. The 10% is his subconscious's inner measure of what is possible. All the goal projections that Nick becomes confronted with that lie between these two curves are in accordance with his unconscious program that makes him open and eager to learn. Nick states a resounding yes, and his brain produces practical solutions. But there exist so many other possibilities within the framework of what is humanly possible. So, now it becomes interesting to see how Nick's program begins to carousel with him. Now we will look at what happens when others begin to move Nick's goals outside his existing program. Notice what happens both in Nick's face and inside his head to the right in the picture. If they set his goal below the red curve, he becomes entirely negative. He says no and feels no. When they lift the goal to 20%, he remains interested but doesn't see how. He expresses a hesitant and uncertain yes. If they lift it to 40%, Nick gets critically assessing of the goal. His consciousness demands a yes, but the program in his subconscious states a clear no. The result is a yes, but. If they lift the goal to 60%, he becomes directly rejecting and abstains from any further discussion on the topic. His subconscious, via the cerebellum, creates matching body language and sends the strangest explanations into his consciousness. The result is a definitive no. Now they lift it to 80%. At this point, Nick can no longer contain himself. He is sarcastic, ironic, and very negative. It is easy to tell that he thinks the others are unrealistic idiots that haven't understood anything at all. And since they are well into it, they double his value in the period until he is 38. The only thing they accomplish by that is that he throws them out and gives them negative publicity wherever he thinks it is suitable. His brain is dominated by a resounding no. All of these reactions happen without any conscious effort on Nick's behalf. They become automatic, and the fact that countless people before him have achieved what we project for him completely passes him by. Let us point out that our efforts toward Nick will recap some fruits after all. It looks that way. He wants to accomplish more and intensifies his efforts. On his wayward journey in life, he is regularly limited by his program. But he has a strong will and works harder and more intensely. The most likely outcome is that he gets nothing else out of it other than stress-related physical and psychological problems. You may have heard about hard workers among us who at life's end sit alone with nothing but empty hands. They have worked hard but did nothing to get rewarded for it at all. They have a blue line that is completely flat, perhaps even falling. Let us say Nick is exposed to eloquent and persuasive advisors, and their wording somehow convinces Nick to attempt to break with this program that he doesn't know exists. They suggest that he goes all in to achieve at least 80% and that they have the solution. He enters into a committing agreement with himself and others, and the agreement in principle looks like this. According to the experts, the implementation of the program leads to 80% increase in value. I commit myself to complete the following program within July 1st of this year. Now let us see what happens. Pay attention. If Nick endures this attempt long enough, it will lead to an accumulated discomfort. He would become more or less explosive. As soon as Nick breaks through the blue line, for example, does the first thing he is not used to, he experiences the agreement as an increasingly intolerable strain. His subconscious produces one reason after another for him to break the deal. If he cannot break it, he carries it through with such low quality that the intended effect abstains. He sabotages himself and generates good arguments to doubt his advisors and experts. He experiences what he himself has initiated as an enormous pressure, and let us repeat the effect this has on Nick. The unusual situation creates unbalance. The subconscious supplies all the necessary arguments to return to his flow zone and regain balance. Nick acts as follows. He generates confusion in his surroundings. The frustration he feels leads to exaggerated self-criticism. He triggers conflicts because he says things that he only benefits from. He denies facts. He postpones things to delay development. The list could get long and lead to great losses in value as opposed to the creation of great value. What could improve this situation? Our suggestion is as follows. Replace Nick's unconscious program with a new one. If it is constructed correctly, it will lead to Nick replacing the self-imposed pressure in the shape of an agreement with one where he requests an action plan. The new program arises primarily through various forms of systematic acceptance and becomes visible in the shape of a new blue line. This provides an expanded flow zone and a greater profit margin. In the best scenario, it leads to Nick setting the agenda and direction. He gets listened to because he himself listens and tries to understand. He creates synergies and innovation. Nick develops personal conditions to allow and trigger the people around him to generate results in a league of their own. This assumes, of course, that Nick has all the necessary competence in place. What this video first and foremost is about is that it is to a very small degree education or the lack of education that decides whether people succeed or fail. It is primarily the blue line, which is a result of genetics, upbringing, and experience. These factors decide what people decide to believe in and hence which results they can achieve. To achieve this effect, we can ask ourselves two questions. Who does what and how is it done? Nick can do this himself through the basic program on this page. It is a demanding process for Nick and demands self-discipline. If the will to do so is there, he can accomplish a lot and can develop an exciting level of consciousness. There is a simpler alternative for Nick, and this is an alternative that will provide both Nick and the environment around him a lot. This alternative is that Nick has or gets a leader that leads Nick in a way that causes his blue line to rise. Which qualities must such a leader possess? These are first and foremost leaders that reside in the yellow area in Maslow. They are leaders that even in stress-filled situations will try to understand before they attempt to be understood. You can find all you need to know about this topic in our video on Maslow and how the human hierarchy of needs can be applied in practice. Nick's new leader should additionally have the capacity to unlock the greatness in people, the best they have, and what they dream of. You can discover more about this in our videos on the uniqueness in people and how this is developed. It would without a doubt also be a huge advantage if this leader could assist Nick to become aware of his various sides and develop openness about himself in all areas. Nick would then be in a position to much more easily learn from others and would hence develop a much greater understanding of others. The importance of this can be seen in the video on Johari's window. If you are interested in lifting the blue line in your surroundings, it is probably a good investment to study all the videos on this site. Many of the videos will serve other purposes, but they contain all the elements that concern the strengthening of willpower to achieve results and develop a better quality of life for oneself and for others. We will round off this video by proposing two hypotheses, one for private life and one for professional life. These hypotheses so frequently come up through history that you might consider them laws of the mind. You will discover what they mean to you by testing them out in practice. Good luck with your promise.